Radio stations, please stand by. We're about to go live in 10 seconds. Five, four, three, two.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, here and everywhere. We thank you once again for allowing us into your space. This is the Monday, November 20 edition of the Daily Press Briefing post Hurricane Maria, hosted by the Office of the Prime Minister. I am Kamala John Baptist Aaron, Press Secretary. This morning's press briefing will focus on commerce, enterprise, and small business development. As you may be well aware, in the aftermath of a hurricane, and especially one as Maria, after the rebuilding process starts, commerce, enterprise, and small business development comes into sharp focus. So this morning we will have the officials from the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development. Just so you know, we will have a statement by the Minister for Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Rosalind Paul. She's also the parliamentary representative for the Paybush constituency. We also have the PS in that ministry and the executive director of that ministry. We will start this morning with the Minister for Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Rosalind Paul, the Member of Parliament for the Paybush constituency, Honourable Paul.
Good morning to everyone who is tuned in to today's briefing, and we are happy to have you listening to us. At the Ministry of Commerce, we continue to work even post-Maria and post-Hurricane Maria. The private sector, small business in Dominica was significantly affected, as most of us would imagine, by the passing of Hurricane Maria. And so the full cost of recovery is some $514 million, of which the vast majority of some 97% can be applied to reconstruction with resilience for that sector. The remainder, some 11 million, is applied to the human recovery needs of the sector. The cost is as a result of this extreme damage suffered by the sector, amounting to EC 495 million and another 20 million in change in flows of loss of the sector. And so it is very fitting that we at the ministry express our solidarity with the private sector, the various enterprises, for their loss of property, even loss of family members. Some of our clients, a few have lost family members, and we stand in solidarity. We empathize with that situation. There's also loss of income, loss of employment and business due to Hurricane Maria. And even in the face of loss, we are happy that we are here as a people and do have hope. And in that spirit of hope, we encourage the private sector, the MSME, these small business owners, to look up and to help us as we move on. The government has already been putting mechanisms in place towards recovery, and you would realize that the government has already put in place duty-free concessions, the waiver of VAT on building materials and other relevant supplies as we move towards recovery, and which would benefit the sector, the private sector and small businesses who are ready to move on with rebuilding. The Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business, our staff, the hardworking staff, has been on the ground doing assessment of damages um, the loss of business, the impact on the business sector. And we have also been in dialogue with private sector representatives, looking at the issues, speaking to the issues, and seeking recommendations to be implemented for rebuilding and recovery and rebuilding. We are also encouraging our clientele, the business sector, that as we rebuild, we do so to ensure resilience. This means, for example, that we are to, as much as possible, adhere to the building codes. You know, and I know the extent of loss to buildings, and that includes not only houses, but your business places. So as we rebuild, we really encourage you to adhere to the building codes. With climate change, we are very aware that we see more frequent and more intense storms and hurricanes, and we must bear that in mind. We have had the experiences, so we have to do better. We also need to give some consideration for insurance, so that is something we will be speaking to the private sector and small businesses about as we move on, and to probably even encourage group insurance where possible. We also encourage people, and we will be putting programs in place that will help to build capacity within the sectors, retooling, training, and institutional strengthening. We are encouraging innovation, and a lot of it would have to do probably with ICT. So the lack of energy and electricity at this time, I know it's a challenge, but as we progress, we will be encouraging innovation. And we at the ministry, we will be revisiting our support facilities and mechanisms and programs. And even as we speak, very recently, we have been in discussion with the potential beneficiaries of the various credit facilities that government has put in place for the productive sectors, such as the facilities at the aid bank for targeting manufacturers. The manufacturing sector would be very affected in terms of the raw materials, particularly for agro-processing. And so we have to revisit and see where their needs are and how you can curtail this program. So we have been in dialogue with them, as well as in terms of the facility for the tourism sector. So overall, the private sector, all of the facilities at the big aid bank that are in place for the productive sector, there's ongoing dialogue. And as a ministry, we will have to look at reprioritizing and seeking to expedite activities towards economic activities again. The Prime Minister already mentioned some time ago provisions being made through funds from the World Bank to support MSMEs, that's small businesses in Dominica, and agriculture. The ministry is well on the way with that in terms of ensuring the proper structure and process. The cabinet has already given its full blessings, and very shortly more details will be communicated to you as to how we roll out this program. It is going to be a very targeted program, and disbursements will be expected within the next 2 weeks or so. And this we will communicate to you as time goes on, because we have some little fine-tuning to take place. But rest assured, grants will be provided to re-stimulate economic activities within the private sector, especially for small businesses. And the expectation is a very targeted program. And so the expectation is that we will target small businesses that are ready to move on to be able to ensure within 3 months that we can stimulate economic activities in these or for these small businesses. So it's very targeted. But parallel to that, we will also continue the ministry's regular program, but with consideration for the current situation of Dominica, and also embracing the Building Back Better concept and the climate resilient concept for us in Dominica. We are doing our assessments and monitoring so we can really respond to the realities on the ground and the real needs of our client base, and to really work towards our vision, which has been articulated over and over again by the Prime Minister of Dominica, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, that we in Dominica, we will become the #1 in terms of building a state, ensuring economic activities, ensuring resilience to climate change. We have to. We do not have a choice. So we at the ministry, we are ready to work with small businesses and private sector, and we are pleased that already some commercial activities has recommenced, and we will do all in our power to push you to ensure that we get Dominica back on stream in terms of economic activities again. We are very aware that the small businesses in Dominica is a significant base for is a significant economic base in Dominica, and a lot of our private sector is dominated by small businesses, and so we have a very big task ahead, but we are up to it, and I know we are resilient people, so we will get there. And subsequently, my staff today, the permanent secretary is with me, the executive director is with me, so they will give you some more details as to what we are doing and what we intend to do at the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Paul. And we will continue with the podium presenters today. And the minister will be followed by the permanent secretary in the Ministry for Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Mrs. Esther Thomas.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for giving the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development this time that we can speak to what we do in the ministry. I want to thank God that we are alive today and we are here. Thank God He took us from Maria. We went through a trying time, but in every difficult circumstances, we must see an opportunity. And for us in the Ministry of Commerce, we are grateful that the Lord has given us that opportunity so that we can target a sector that is critical to employment, critical to income generation, critical to poverty reduction. And we are happy that as technical persons, we can work with our minister to make the economic sector, subsector, micro, small and medium enterprises sector that can drive forward the development of Dominica. I want to also express sympathies to many of our small businesses who suffer loss. Mr. Stevenson will speak to some of the assessment in detail and some of the sectors that were impacted, because the sector is a very broad one. Many times people hear micro and small and they don't have a knowledge of the all-encompassing areas or economic activities that are involved, and so I will allow Mr. Stevenson to speak to that. I will just want to reiterate that in terms of the ministry, our vision is to be the driver, fueling business economic transformation. And within that vision, our mission is to be a facilitator and enabler to create an environment that supports, strengthens, and promotes enterprise and business development. And if we look at Dominica, indeed there are opportunities that have been created that we have to facilitate, that we have to support. And indeed, the government of Dominica is ready and well poised to provide that through the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development. I just also want to say that before Maria, we were very active. We are indeed an active ministry. In fact, we were busy providing technical assistance, that is guidance to people who want to prepare their business plan, people who just want advisors to, they have a business idea and they're not sure what to do, and they came into the ministry and they were provided with that kind of support. We also provide technical capacity building, in that we provide training, and our training is geared at giving people an appreciation of what a business can do for them. And so we teach them how to grow their business successfully through training in accounting and just understanding their vision and their goal as they get involved in business. And so last financial year, which we are not quite finished yet, last financial year and this financial year, we were very much involved in the decentralization of resources to local authorities so that they could make available at short notice financing assistance to persons at the rural level to enable them to grow their business. And so the government made available some $7.3 million last year, and some of it earlier this year, to be distributed far and wide within 16 local authorities. And interestingly, those local authorities, the persons who received those funds, they were distributed in subsectors of agriculture, art and craft, construction, education, entertainment, food and beverage, hospitality, tourism, information technology, manufacturing, pharmaceutical, retail, service. And when we say service, we talk about vendors. And there were persons who came in to ensure that their business were on the right footing, and we provided that support to them. So we are very much involved in at the grassroots level, and we are getting involved in ensuring that at the rural level that people are able to make an impact at their various communities with the support provided by the government through their local authority. And parallel to this also, at the ministry, we had small businesses who came in to receive financial assistance so that they would then be able to make an impact in the business. And so we are very pleased as the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development that we are available to make that support, assistance, which the government makes available to the ministry, that we can distribute, that we can decentralize. We also have a specialized program that we do, Rural Enterprise Development Centers, and we seek to have persons incubate within a specific location with specific talent that we develop to the point where we graduate them into a small business. And some of these people, as a result of Maria, we have to take some of them to the next level, which is getting them into small businesses. So we will make available some startup grants that they will be able to start their own business. So for instance, in Dublin, we had a very thriving group called Dreams and Stitches, and they were involved in soft furnishings. So they made things like pillowcases, sheets, soft cushions, and the little pouches, and so on the West Coast they were available. But the Maria gave the building where they occupied some damage, and so we have to come in to support them to get them back on track so that they can continue to be located on the West Coast to be able to provide that service to persons within as far from Dublin to Portsmouth. We also had a group in the Kalinago territory at the Cineco Enterprise Center, and they were involved in art and craft. We had a small tour guide group there. We had a sewing group, and of course we had a reception area. Mindful that Cineco is at the first point of entry of the Kalinago territory, we created that enterprise center there so that it would be an initial point for information to the Kalinago territory. But as I said, Maria is giving us a positive and the negative. So the shelter has been, the center is now provided as a shelter, but we are going then to take these people who we have built capacity, we have trained, we have provided support to. They are coming out of this situation, and we will graduate them into a small business within their own community. We also are building a very good facility at Geneva, the Geneva facility of the Aid Bank. We were doing one there where we were going to have a bakery, we were going to have a garment manufacturing area there, but the building suffered damage, and we are now regrouping ourselves and reorganizing so that we can get back on track within the southern district of Granby. And also we have an ICT support system in Paybush, where we were providing ICT support to the communities and its neighboring communities. And in light of no electricity, we have to come with creative things that we can do so that we can have this ICT enterprise functioning. So our work is cut out for us, and we are available, and we are here to say that at the Ministry of Commerce, we have hope. We are there to ensure that we put our commerce, enterprise, and small business development to continue, to put them back on track, and we are available to be there to give them support. Mr. Stevenson will provide some further detail on some of the assessments that we've been doing, because we want to call upon persons in the micro and small business sector to come to the Ministry of Commerce, because we are on the ground, but sometimes we may miss you, because sometimes when we go to some places, they are not there. And so if you have not seen us, we may have passed, we may have missed you, and so we are calling upon you to come in to do the survey that we're doing, because it will be critical for us when we do the evaluation for providing funding. We will be able to have an appreciation of who we are going to target immediately, who we are going to target in the short term, and who we are going to target in the medium term. And as the Honorable Minister said, our goal is to build back better. And she defined that building back better. Just to reiterate, we want to ensure that the standards are adhered to. And so we talk about, for instance, people who are involved in the food and beverage. We want to ensure that you have the environmental unit, ensure that your food and beverage area is recertified for business. You also have your tools and equipment meet the standards, because you can't just utilize any tool and equipment to do cooking. It is recommended that all your tools be stainless steel to avoid transfer of germs that ought not to be transferred. So all those things that we will be paying attention, and we will be available to provide that guidance to you. The Minister will come back to speak to some of the policy development that we are involved in. I would prefer her to talk on the policy development issues, so she will come back to speak to that. And so before she does, I would prefer if Mr. Stevenson speaks to the post-assessment that we're doing, Maria, and then we will call her back to speak to some other policy issues that we are also involved in to bring the ministry back on track and to continue the work that we're doing in Dominica. We are thankful to the government of Dominica, who recognizes that the micro, small, and medium enterprise is a very important sector to the development of Dominica. And as I said, it's important for growth, it's important for poverty reduction, it's important for income generation, it's important for employment creation. And because of this, we are heartily always on the being thought of when allocations are being made. And so funds are not a thing that we have any doubt that we will not get, because the government recognizes it as a very important sector. And we also work very closely with the private sector, and the manufacturing sector is a very important sector for us too. We were instrumental in the development of the facility that the government made available at the Aid Bank. And right now what we're doing, we are revisiting the terms and conditions so that they can accelerate it at a faster pace than they did before Maria. And so this is where we are at. They have submitted a document which we received on Friday, and we are hoping that we can accelerate it quickly to the government. The Prime Minister gave his assurance. Once he receives it, he will give it favorable consideration. And so we need to move ahead for the manufacturing sector. And we are grateful for the support for that sector. And we are willing and ready, and our doors are open on the 3rd floor, government headquarters, to provide the guidance and support and direction that you who are involved in the development of this sector require. And so we thank you for this press briefing here this morning, and thank you for that opportunity. And we look forward to continuing the work that we have to do for the people of Dominica. Thank you.
We thank you to P.S. Thomas. And at this time, we will get to the gentleman who evidently everyone says has all the details. So we are looking forward to those details. And for those details, let me call to the podium the Executive Director in the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Mr. Alexander Stevenson.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister of Commerce, Ms. Rosalind Paul, Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Esther Thomas, members of the media, pleasant good morning to you. We would like to, before we begin with the details, we'd just like to acknowledge some of our strategic partners, the stakeholders who work very closely with us. No doubt the Dominica Youth Business Trust, the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, the Dominica Business Forum, many of the other private sector entities, and the Dominica Exports Imports Agency, DEXIA, and a number of these other persons. We'd just like to acknowledge them for the work that they have been doing with us post-Maria, and to thank them so that some of the details we can share with you this morning. Also, before I begin, we'd just like to extend our deepest sympathies to a number of our small business clients, particularly persons from the community of Point Michelle. We had the training, I think it was in May of this year, and we had close to 75 persons at that training. And 2 of the persons who were in attendance in that training has died. Okay? So we really like to extend our sympathies to those persons. They all had thriving small businesses as well. And they were very eager in wanting to take on board the training that was disseminated to them at that time. So we'd like to extend our sympathies to them, as well as to other persons who perished around Dominica. Our thoughts and prayers are with you also. For small business, what we came to realize in the details that we have over 10,000 small businesses throughout Dominica, and that there are 3 main magnetic drivers or magnetic pools that cause these 10,000 businesses to be clustered around those 3 major entities. The first one is around Roseau and its environs, and that takes into consideration government employees who are looking for consumption during the course of the given day, school children for transportation. You're looking at persons at the banks, the credit unions, the ports. You're looking at persons in construction and the service sector. All these people, at some point within a given day, typically today, Monday, shortly, they'll be looking for some sort of refreshment, some sort of snack, some sort of break. After work, they would be looking probably to have their nails done, have themselves groomed. They might be looking for a bus to go home. Would you believe all of those sort of services are provided by micro, small, and medium enterprises? Some may be looking to shop as well. So supermarkets, small shops, stores, boutiques, those form the micro, small, and medium enterprises. In the area of Portsmouth, of course, we know the direct influence of the Ross University School of Medicine. They have a huge following of micro, small, and medium enterprises that are willing every day to serve. Their livelihoods depend on that enterprise, that level of economic activity. And the third one is the community of Marigot, where the Douglas Charles Airport is located. So persons that are coming back to Dominica, persons that are coming to Dominica for the first time, persons that are leaving Dominica to do business, you've got to traverse to the Douglas Charles Airport. And many persons there, the bus drivers, the taxi drivers, the tour guides, and many of these persons are there positioning themselves to facilitate that movement of persons. Of course, the Rosa cruise ship berth, as I just highlighted, the tour guides, does come to mind, along with the Portsmouth cruise ship berth as well. Persons who are providing tour operations. The National Trail is another segment, will be the fourth driver for economic activity. So tourism plays a very vital role. Services in general plays a very vital role for those MSME businesses. So before Hurricane Maria, as I indicated, we had 10,000 MSMEs that flourished throughout Dominica as a result of the deliberate focus of the government of Dominica through its growth and social protection strategy policies. And that initiative included, it was to combat, we would very well recall, the post-banana preferential market challenges, the restructuring of the local economy when the debt to GDP ratio was over 100%, response to the threat of global financial crisis that saw significant reductions in remittances where there were large diaspora communities, the increase in youth unemployment, the marginalization and abuses of rural women and young girls, the lack of a national entrepreneurial culture at the time, the underdevelopment of music, sports, arts, and culture, including the creative arts, the low participation rates, and the benefits of tourism by a broad base of the citizenry. You had a very low rate at the time. Now, many bus drivers, you see many buses around the place, as a result of the efforts of the Ministry of Commerce and the deliberate intervention of the government through its growth and social protection strategy, because of course the bananas that we once depended on was curtailed in terms of its economic scale and benefits to the country. We had to diversify. So very rapidly a number of areas came into play. Okay? And as highlighting them to you, I think many of you would appreciate it was really a very tall order to have got to the point where Thursday, before Hurricane Maria, we were told at a meeting we had just come out of the woods. The efforts, we had just begun to realize the gains of our efforts in the Ministry of Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business towards creating a very favorable micro, small and medium enterprise environment. We're actually fulfilling that mission and mission of the ministry. And only 72 hours or 96 hours thereafter, we got devastated by Hurricane Maria. But the gains that were made, the government of Dominica is ensuring that we don't lose everything. So we have gone out there and have done rapid assessments. We had the experience prior to Hurricane Maria. There was Erica. So we have had the assistance from the World Bank, and the level of training that was received, particularly from the technical staff at the Ministry of Commerce. We did not wait for the World Bank people to come to Dominica. P.S. Thomas immediately sprung into action to get us out there to visit. And we visited 135 small businesses in Roseau and 77 small businesses in Portsmouth. And we were able to get an understanding as to what were the challenges that many of them faced. And of course, many of the persons were shocked. So they were basically saying to us that they're still assessing. We did not stop. We continued going there all last week. This week again, we are going to continue going there. When we joined the World Bank, we converted the information that they gave us to a database, and we have been able to utilize that information. And the conclusion, so hence the reason why we have some of the details. We can tell you of the small promising virgin coconut oil processing linkages, we have experienced 100% damage. Total devastation of coconuts and damage to the processing facilities as well. 100% damage of our bay oil linkages, existing loss and damage to bay leaf trees, processing facilities, and the office space. You pass on cross streets by the area of Macmillan, you would see the office of the Dominica Bay Oil Cooperative Societies Limited. The roof has been compromised, and it will take them some time, and that's been impacted earlier, this mere 2 years earlier, by Tropical Storm Erica. Okay, and whilst they were beginning to get themselves together again, they've been dealt a second hit. Significant damage to vehicles of bus and taxi operators, and the damage is dominated by breakage of windscreens. 90% damage of hotels and guest houses, and over 90% damage and losses to vendors, hucksters, landscapers, retail traders, hairdressers, barbers, manicurists. Hairdressers in particular, lots of their hair drying equipment got compromised with water. Their shampoo basins, the chairs, those things got compromised. The roof got lost, building imploded or exploded, and a lot of the equipment got damaged. Plumbers, electricians, mechanics, construction enterprises, honey producers, bakers, furniture makers, food and beverage providers, including caterers and restaurateurs, musicians, and art and craft producers. If we know our greatest pioneer in the Boer music, Mr. Derek Rapiters, lost everything. There's a few houses away from the financial center. His basement got filled in with the river and the debris, and all his musical equipment got damaged in there. Okay? And we'd like to encourage persons to support the GoFundMe account of this pioneer, this musical pioneer. And so we have a number of all the areas that we said, the activities that occur in Roseau, the activities that occur in Portsmouth, the activities that occur in Marigot, the activities as a result of the National Trail, many of the support enterprises that would have created life around those areas have been severely devastated. And so the challenge for us now is to come up with a series of rapid assessment strategies, rapid assessment relief packages to assist persons in those areas to regain their livelihoods, to regain the opportunity of feeling that they're making a meaningful contribution to the economy of Dominica, that they have a job, there's something to live for every day, to have a vision, to have a purpose out there in this life, and to get out there and to make Dominica the best that it can be with their various efforts. So we really like to empathize with persons, and we really like to thank you, the media, this morning, and the Office of the Prime Minister, for giving us the opportunity to share with you the magnitude of the damage that has been sustained by the MSMEs. And by way of MSMEs, I'm sure many persons would probably want to have a clearer idea as to what do we mean by a micro business, what do we mean by a small business, what do we mean by a medium business or a medium enterprise. And just to give you our working definition, MSMEs are defined on the basis of full-time employment, annual sales, investment in plant and equipment, as well as manufacturing space. For micro enterprises, in terms of the number of employees, anywhere between 1 to 5 employees, with an annual sale of less than $100,000, with investments of less than $50,000. Many of our micro businesses in Dominica can comfortably start off with $10,000 to start a small business or micro business. The small business employees, we would define those as persons who employ anywhere between 5 to under 20 persons, would have less than 500,000 sales annually, and would have about just a little under or just about $150,000 in investments. And in terms of those in manufacturing, they would occupy about 4,000 square feet of manufacturing space. A medium enterprise would employ about 20 to 50 employees, would have, in terms of its annual sales, less than $1.5 million and would have invested less than $500,000 in plant and machinery. And the manufacturing space would thus be about 6,000 square feet. And you'd be surprised to find out, not only in Dominica, but pretty much worldwide, those micro, small, and medium enterprises employ more than 50% of persons worldwide, account for more than 60% of the gross domestic product of a country annually. So imagine we have a population of 70,000 persons, and that's about maybe 40,000 persons working, and you have 10,000 persons that are earning a living. That's 25%, earning a living for themselves, being their own bosses, and they would have a family average of what, between 3 to 5 persons. You're really talking a significant number of persons in terms of the economic devastation that Maria has brought on those persons. And imagine the economic impacts before Maria that we had in terms of the Ministry of Commerce with the injection of what? $13.5 million. Okay, for existing businesses as well as new businesses to get that opportunity to be their own boss, to have that dream, but also to become export ready. There are many of those persons, particularly the persons that have been assisted by the Dominica Youth Business Trust. The government of Dominica has a loan guarantee mechanism where persons that may not be able to put up collateral, the government can put up $20,000 for an individual age 18 to 35 years at the Dominica Youth Business Trust. I speak of the Dominica Youth Business Trust because on behalf of the Ministry of Commerce and the Minister and the PS, I've been appointed one of the Board of Trustees. So we are very much intimate with the knowledge of what the Dominica Youth Business Trust has been doing out there. And those young persons, imagine a young man graduated from college, had a thriving business. I know of a number of them in the virgin coconut oil sector. We know of Big G's in the infused varieties, line and range of pepper sauce production that is also export potentially ready. Okay, imagine the setback. Okay, imagine Mr. Young Ambo from Dublin, okay, with his Afri-Cocoa, instant cocoa mix that has been test marketed in Guadeloupe and a few of the other OECS countries. Imagine the setback, okay, and imagine the benefits, the loan guarantee benefits that the government of Dominica has provided those young persons. Mr. Don Saint-Jean with coffee as well, okay. Those four individuals showed very tremendous level of promise, not only for the Dominican market, but also to export. Yeah, and we really want to ask these individuals to hold the fort, bear with us. Assistance, no doubt, will be coming their way. Thank you.
Just to wrap up, we'll just go back to our targeted program with the World Bank. But before that, I'd just like to mention to you some of the policy development programs that we started before Hurricane Maria, but which becomes even more important now that we are trying to not just get back into the economic development of this country, but to do so in a better way. And so before Maria, we were well on our way to drafting policy for MSMEs in Dominica. And this was being done with the support of the OAS. And we are pleased that to bring it to the final draft, we have a commitment from the OAS that they're going to continue to support. So we will be continuing work in that regard to have this policy finalized. And also we have been partnering with the OAS as well for what is called an SBDC program. And as we look at the issues that confront our small businesses, We know that the SBDC program, in terms of having mentorship, in terms of business counseling, business advisory, having some central points of that, it becomes very important. And so we will also continue this partnership program. As soon as we have the policy in place, in fact, concurrently we were working on having legislation as well for the MSME sector. So we have the CARICOM draft legislation, but this we will have to finalize as long as we have our policy in place and to suit our own context. So the harmonized, it will be a harmonized legislation, a harmonized policy, but as you would know, we have our own individual reality in Dominica. So the policy and the legislation will be finalized to suit Dominica's context. So this is the policy and legislative work that we are continuing, and this is to ensure that we have a proper policy and legislative framework to ensure that we have thriving MSMEs in Dominica that can not only provide us in Dominica the goods and services, but to get them export ready, meeting the necessary standards so that we can become competitive. So that we are working on. And I earlier also mentioned the targeted program with the funds provided by the World Bank. This will be provided to the tune of about $8 million. And with the objective, this assistance is a targeted intervention to micro and small businesses aimed at accelerating economic activity island-wide. So in providing these grants, we will ensure that we cover all the geographical locations. So we'll target all the parishes in Dominica, and we will ensure that there's equitable distribution. And it will include working capital to include purchase stock, inventory, and supplies, to purchase or repair equipment, to purchase building materials, to pay labor for construction and or cleanup, to purchase tools and equipment, as I said, and to refurbish existing equipment and small machinery. So the funds provided will go towards that for our small businesses. And as I said, it will target the various parishes, but also target sectors such as retail shops, bus and taxi operators, vendors, chainsaw producers of lumber. You know, we have quite a lot of lumber now available, so we can turn that into opportunities for these people. Charcoal producers, light manufacturing and agro-processing, arts and craft producers, food and beverage, construction enterprises, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, honey producers, landscapers, bakers, those involved in cosmetology. You have hairdressers, barbers, and those involved in manicure and pedicure practitioners as well, and furniture makers. All of these sectors will be able to benefit from the funds. But as I said, we will tell you when you can come. We have a few little bits and pieces to finalize, and very shortly you'll be called to apply for these funds. Thank you very much. Yes.
Good morning, Julian Morris, Channel 5 News. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm just wondering if in your assessment you find that it has become necessary to recommend to certain people in the assessment following Maria, whether there are areas where you feel perhaps you would advise people to go into other areas of business. I'm not sure if that has become one of your discussion points with them. If you could speak to that.
news, yes, that is one of the areas that goes into the assessment for a number of reasons. One, there could have been, before Maria, a saturation of persons in the sector, and it could have been challenging economically for them to have made it sustainable. Two, the location of the business. It may not have been the best environment, geographically speaking, in terms of the results of floods. That would speak for itself as well. Three, the structure of the facility. Four, that person's level of expertise, because you now got the opportunity to reassess their readiness to be entrepreneurs. And so P.S. alluded to that point a little earlier in terms of persons preparing food. The emphasis now is on commercial equipment. We would really like to make an appeal to the many commercial enterprises out here who sells stoves. We hardly see out there commercial stoves. We don't see commercial ovens. The little stove that you use at home, you're going to go sell pies with that. You are going to have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning just to really bake about 100 of those. Whereas if a commercial oven with 5 shelves, yeah, you can do that in 2 hours. And based on the dynamics of the market, you can have a few more again. Instead of every time somebody comes to you, sorry, no more till tomorrow. Okay, so those sort of hindrances can be curtailed, and you go into this because building back better, you have to take into consideration all those. So where we were before Maria, where would we like to be post Maria, and how are we going to get there? Okay, the assessments, that is the things in terms of the technical assistance and support that we provide persons. Okay, so if we give you, for example, a micro business or small business, say $5,000 to $10,000, it might not be sufficient to do everything for you. But if you're astute enough, you have been keeping your records, you have been paying your loans diligently, you could utilize that funds from us as your cash security, approach your credit union, approach the National Bank, approach the Aid Bank. That now could be utilized as your cash security, and depending on the leverage, if it's 1 to 10, you have 5,000, you could get as much as 50,000. But you must have a recovery plan. You must show how that earnings, whatever it is that you make, how can you turn it around, pay those debts, pay that loan, and have a thriving small business. Okay, so these are the level of engagements that we take. Now, we'd like to congratulate particularly the people in the north, okay, Portsmouth, Paybush, and the other areas of the north, Calibishi, and for their level of entrepreneurship, the enterprise nature. Many of these people have their businesses registered. Many of them have their businesses with a bank account. Many of them are registered with the Dominica Social Security. Many of them even go as far as having a VAT registration or an income tax number. Okay? When that small business policy gets finalized, there's going to be a regime of incentives. Okay? It's going to talk no doubt about climate change and climate resilience enterprises. So those things are going to help persons with a level of automaticness, if you want to coin that term. So that something like that happened to you, but you have those prerequisites already in place. Those are the sort of benefits one will be able to accrue or exploit from the system. Okay? So back to the original question, if we advise persons, the answer is yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to allow someone else to ask a question, but I was thinking you mentioned areas like coconut oil and so on. These areas where pepper sauce or what have you, cocoa powder. These people had some real challenges, but I would imagine maybe as an aside, the people who bake bread using wood didn't quite have a problem this time around. They didn't. So essentially, what I'm pointing to is that there are businesses where people really have to do a lot more rethinking. I'm wondering what happens, what do you tell people beyond just saying to them, hold the fort and we're doing some assessment and so on. What do you say to, for example, the cluster you mentioned, those who provide services at Ross, let's say. Ross is not currently operating fully now, and but hopefully they will. I hope soon, probably by January or so. But what do you say to them beyond just holding the fort right now? Those who really cannot have regular business as usual? What happens? Are they being trained now? Are you engaging them on some level now that keeps them occupied in some sort of, I'm not sure, what would you be doing in interfacing with them right now?
As Mr. Stevenson would say that our staff, they're on the ground, so we're engaging these people in dialogue, giving them that sense of hope, but also providing them with ways that they can, in the interim, occupy themselves. So wherever they are, they get involved in small business. For example, there was a small business, even in Paybush, had a thriving little shop and so. And she used to be occupied the entire day. But right now she has found a way to occupy herself. Just in the morning, she had part of her business was doing like a snack, so she's now doing the snack part of her business in the morning. So where they can help themselves, we encourage them to do so in whatever way they can, even while they wait. Okay, so some get generators as well to run their businesses and so on. Yeah.
Sylvia John, Dominica Vibes. We know that the tourism industry plays a huge role in the small business sector. What are some of the challenges that you've faced with the postponed cruise ship season? And do you think that the vendors and the other small business owners would be ready for the coming season, which is opening on January 1st, I believe?
It's interesting you ask us that question because last week tourism was on the ball, and they would have given you an answer to that question. But to those who are small businesses like the vendors, the art and craft producers, the intervention that we are working feverishly with the World Bank, it's geared at targeting persons like this. So as soon as we finalize this targeted intervention, some of these people will be able to benefit as well. And to add to the question that Mr. Morris asked, right now people have to be involved in cleaning, reorganizing, redecorating, replanning, and we provide that guidance and support. So by the time the targeted intervention comes in, it means they will be ready to benefit. And so they must prepare themselves for that targeted intervention. And so we have guided them along those ways. So all is necessary for them to put their act together. So as soon as we say, come in and apply for the targeted intervention, they are saying, I'm ready, I know where I can find my equipment, I know where my laborers are, I know where I'm going to operate from, my place is cleaned, I am recertified by the environmental department, I have my food handler's permit, all those little things they should be paying attention to now, so that by the time the funds are ready to be tapped into, they are ready to go. Okay?
Yes, thank you. Just one final thing that occurred to me. On the other end of their business, if they have commitments, is that being taken care of? Like, they will, let's say, to some financial institution or something. How are they being assisted on that level as well? I'm not sure to what extent these small business people are indebted or have financial challenges on that side. Nothing is coming in.
Mainly, I think the financial institutions would be the ones to address issues like that. And I know the credit union, for some of the institutions, have given waivers, and I hope that the small businesses would benefit from that. But it would be an issue for the financial institutions, really. Yes, thanks. Yes.
We have just today gotten a very detailed idea of where Dominica is post Maria as far as rebuilding its commercial, enterprise and small business sector. And for that, we would like to thank the Minister for Commerce, Enterprise and Small Business Development, Honourable Roslyn Paul, the Member of Parliament for the Paybush constituency, the Permanent Secretary within that ministry, Mrs. Esther Thomas, as well as the Executive Director, Mr. Alexander Stevenson, all for their input this morning about the way forward post-Hurricane Maria for commerce, enterprise and small business development in Dominica. Obviously, we've learned a huge sector of the Dominican society with at least 10,000 thriving small businesses in the Commonwealth of Dominica. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your time and I wish you a great day.